The Ratel infantry fighting vehicle was in many ways the heavy cavalry for South Africa during the border war. Between 1976 and about 1987, when production ceased, South Africa manufactured almost 1,400 of these formidable vehicles. South Africa employed these vehicles in many ways very differently to the prescribed manner in which they would have been used by their European counterparts in the capacity of supporting tank forward movements. Ratels were made up into battle groups, of which the purpose was to strike very deep and very fast into enemy territory and then to quickly abscond and disappear from view. In particular, Ratels were a favorite to be used for flanking movements and to rapidly change positions so that the enemy couldn't pin them down. In this endeavor, they were completely successful most of the time. The Ratel did have a couple of drawbacks, however. Firstly, the armor was fairly light and not terribly resistant against heavy enemy fire. Another problem was that the Ratel was not always able to perform so well in very muddy conditions or extremely rough terrain, although its traversing capacity was still very much formidable in most respects. When the invasion of Angola commenced, the strategic orders that were given were rather unique. The orders dictated that no equipment might be lost, no tanks could be used, and no soldiers could be lost. This was, of course, unreasonable and completely unattainable, and very soon they were casualties. Although things didn't go so smoothly right in the beginning, the old Eland armored vehicles became gradually replaced by the much more formidable Ratel vehicles, and the Ratels then subsequently became reinforced with very formidable South African Olifant tanks that were newly developed during that time. Even so, it was still very much expected of the Ratel fighting vehicle to engage the Soviet tanks, notably the T-34 and the T-54 tanks, which considerably outclassed the Ratel on the battlefield in terms of striking power. It wouldn't normally be expected of these kinds of infantry fighting vehicles to engage heavy tanks, but in this case it was necessary, and therefore the South Africans quickly had to find out what the weaknesses of the Soviet tanks were. Accordingly, they had to learn to shoot for certain weak spots in the Soviet tank armor, notably towards the rear section, and to shoot at the tracks, of course. But a more creative method of eliminating Soviet tanks was always to lure them into densely wooded regions. The long barrels of the tanks were not able to turn sideways during wooded conditions, because if they did, they would invariably snag on the tree trunks and then bend and become inoperable. The Ratel came in several main variants. The first one was the Ratel 60. That was armed with 60mm mortars, and then there was the Ratel 81, which had 81mm mortars, and then there was the old stalwart mainstay, the Ratel 90, armed with a formidable 90mm gun. And of course there was also the missile-armed anti-tank Ratel, known as the ZT3, with a fuel range of about 1,000 kilometers and a top speed of just over 100 kilometers per hour. The Ratel remained feared among the enemy and very much beloved among South African soldiers. The Ratel 90 in this video is kept at Sandstone Estate near Vicksburg in the Eastern Free State. Here it is often one of the star attractions during their periodic open weekends, in which visitors from all over South Africa and indeed from all over the world are welcome to enjoy a variety of vehicles that are demonstrated as items of living history, ranging all the way from steam engines to ox wagons to military vehicles.